Hello again, writers. We've reached the 5th lesson in our course, How to Write a Book in Your Spare Time When You Have No Spare Time or Energy. And this one is going to deal with cycles of creativity. I want to start off with a couple of little things. The first one is acknowledging how very difficult it is not to look up and move my head. So if you know me and I seem really stiff, it's because I'm working in like a tiny range of motion here. Yeah. So that. Another thing, if you have been working through these lessons, keep in mind that there's a lot here, so much, and some of it may be really difficult to navigate on your own. If you can talk to other writers, if you have a spiritual director, a therapist, a mentor, anyone else that you can talk to these things about, I encourage you to do so. But if you find yourself stuck, feel free to reach out to me and schedule a coaching session. We can go deeper into your specific questions, the challenges that you're facing. It's an hour on the phone. It's no big deal, easy to schedule, and very affordable. So just reach out to me through Instagram. You can send me a direct message, or you can go to my website, helenasorensen.com, HELENASORENSEN.com. And there's a link there under services that'll send you straight to my email. So, cycles of creativity. One of the things we're doing again and again in this series is acknowledging things that are below the surface. We're trying to pull out what's invisible and unnamed and make it visible and identify it so that we can deal with it. It's a really powerful practice. And that's as much true for writers as it is true for just general personal growth. One of the things that might be helpful to you in that vein is to make a list of things that you think define writers. What does it mean to be a writer? So if you could sit down and make a list of characteristics or habits or behaviors or successes that define a person as a writer, what would they be? It's possible that those things are true, but it's very likely that they're not true, that it's an exaggeration, that it's sometimes true, that it's maybe a very limited perspective on what success is, or even on what it means to be a writer. Sometimes we don't know all those things we believe, and so we really struggle with shame or imposter syndrome, or this sense of like, oh, I could never be that. Almost like I don't deserve to be that, or I'm getting too big for my britches, or like, who do I think I am? How dare I? Just making a list and acknowledging what you think it means to be a writer might be helpful. Perhaps one of the items on that list is the idea that a writer is someone who writes every day. Now, there is some truth, of course, to the idea that when you make a habit of writing, you become a better writer. You find it's easier to identify yourself as a writer. And when you identify yourself as a writer, you find it's easier to make time to actually write. Right? So there's a cycle there of productivity and growth, a positive cycle that you can get into when you actually are doing the writing. However, the idea that you write every day in order to become a writer is so constraining. It makes so many people feel hopeless before they even write a single word. I have written, as I've said, 5 books since my kids were born. So many essays, scores of essays. Book reviews, music reviews, poetry, songs, all of it came in little bursts. There has never been a time in the last 13 years when I consistently wrote every day, unless I was in the middle of a novel, drafting a novel, and I was just hitting it, or the kids were at their grandparents', or whatever it was. And even then, I came to a point where I was exhausted and I had to step away for a while, and then I went back into it. So one of the things that kind of perpetuates this idea, it has to do with men and industrialism. And I kind of came to this revelation a couple of years ago when I was reading through this book with my children called Why'd They Wear That? It was a super interesting, I think National Geographic, kind of really big coffee table book, tons of great illustrations, and it gave the history of different fashion trends and how they influenced, everything. it was so cool. Like a little tidbit would be that some of the British and French interest in resources in the New World, in North America, were driven by the demand for beaver fur to make a certain kind of hat that was in style during that time. Like, what? Hats changed the world. Yeah, it's wild. But as we got to the point in the book where we were learning about the Industrial Revolution, I kept thinking about, oh my gosh, there's something so fundamental that shifted here when we started using machines that could run during any season of the year, that could run almost 24/7. We went from imagining life in cycles, right? In an agrarian society, in the summer, maybe spring, part of fall, we have certain activities that we do. And then when the weather is really cold and the land is lying fallow, we go inside and we do our creative stuff. We embroider, we carve, whatever it is. And that made sense because the cycles of the seasons necessitated a change in behavior and in priority. So I thought, gosh, nowadays, we don't do that. We don't slow down in the winter. We don't, my gosh, during the pandemic, people just switched all their work online and kept going as fast as ever before. But now under the stress of a constantly changing world and the threat of this spreading virus. When we live that way, we tend to burn out. We tend to be so terribly depleted because there hasn't been a season of rest when things could rebuild, the soil could rebuild, things could be renewed so that something new could be born. We just go and go and go and go and go. Human beings cannot have a steady output consistently over time forever. The planet cannot produce consistently over time forever. It has to pull back in order to produce again. So this idea of productivity being like a single line, like it's just this line, hopefully over the course of our career just goes up and up and up, straight line, man, it feels, there's something really bewitching about that idea. Like I'll start and then I'll make more and then I'll do better and I'll just be so consistent in this steady production of content, right? And so what happens when we view our creativity as this straight line, just like we view time now as a single line moving forward into the future rather than a cycle of seasons, or like the liturgical year, which was central to people's understanding of time for the longest time. When we do that, if we're not moving upward or forward along the line, we have so much anxiety, we have so much angst, we have so much stress. So the moving forward, we get really excited. Look at me making progress. I've finished 50 pages of my novel. I feel so good. I can do this forever. I'm in the flow, man. The trouble is when we stop, there's no sense of sticking there because the line it's angled just a little bit up, right? So when we stop, we imagine ourselves to be sliding backward, to be losing ground. And so there's all this shame and fear about, oh God, I'm not doing it every day. What do I do? What do I do? I'm going to lose my momentum. I'm going to never finish. I hate myself, right? Those are the kinds of feelings writers have if they're not making great progress. Then, in the season where they ought to be resting, or maybe need to be resting, or need to be doing something else because their life demands it, they are filled with shame and frustration and self-loathing. And then when it comes time to start working again, when they're ready to produce again, they have all this anxiety about being behind, right? They can't just enjoy this now progress or forward motion or whatever it is, because there's guilt about how much farther I could have been if I had done this steadily all along. Okay, that's a terrible way to approach creativity, and it makes every stage of the process scary. Even when you're producing, there's this niggling fear that you can't keep it going forever. It's an awful way to try to write a book. Added to that is the reality that so many people who give us advice on when and how to write are either people who write full-time because they have contracts and they are successful, and so they do sit down every day and write. Yes, Stephen King gets up every morning and writes until lunch and then reads until Red Sox games and has dinner and goes to bed and does it all over again. Okay, yeah, he's a professional writer. He's paid to do this. Manuscripts are due, okay? And we hear advice from men whose hormonal cycle runs on a 24-hour cycle, whatever. It's a 24-hour thing. And their energy tends to peak in the morning. So when a man says, you should get up every morning and write, there is an excellent logic to that. Of course, he should get up every morning and write because that is the time when he's most focused, most energetic, and tomorrow morning, he's going to feel that way again. It's amazing. Women's bodies, I think you already know, do not operate on that kind of hormonal cycle. And so as women, when we hear men say that and find ourselves, heaven forbid we also have families to care for or other careers or other relationships or any number of things that tend to weigh heavier on our understanding of ourselves than our creative work. Oh my gosh, we feel shamed. We feel completely overwhelmed when we're in a time when we need to actually physically pull back and care for our bodies and nourish them and rest. We feel so much shame. Like, why can't I just get up every morning and produce just like Mr. Writer can? I want to give you permission as a writer, and particularly as a female writer, to enjoy the flow. When you're there, let's say you sit down this week and you get so much done and you are feeling it. Yes. Make no apologies. Bring it. Enjoy the hell out of that week of writing. And next week, if you need to pull back and only write on 3 of those days, okay. Give it all on those 3 days and do not apologize for the other 4 when you did nothing, okay? Remember again that the writing is only one piece of this puzzle. Everything else in your life goes in to feed the writing. If you're caring for yourself, that is writing. Really, ultimately, that is writing. If you are finding ways to inspire yourself, if you're learning, if you're resting, that's writing too. It's all going to impact what you do when you sit down in front of the computer. When you get to a season where you can't write because you're sick, because your kid is sick, because you have something else to do, because you are blocked, because you are dealing with some kind of really heavy emotional fallout, because you have conflict, because your body cannot do it today, no apologies there either, okay? Throw yourself fully into the rest or into the alternate activity, okay? No, I should be writing. Do not waste 1 ounce of energy on that. One of the focuses of this course is, I've got no time and energy. How do I find that? One of the ways is we don't throw away energy feeling guilty about the days when we don't write, okay? Don't mess with that. It's a total waste of time and a total drain on your resources. And then when you're getting back into the mode, maybe I can't go full out this week, but I'm going to sit down and try another paragraph. Savor it. No guilt about where I might have been if I had been doing this every day. Nope. I'm just picking back up into the flow of creativity, and soon maybe I will be just moving forward full force. But every part of that cycle is necessary and is beautiful and is fine and will still get you where you want to go in the end. I am urging you to honor your humanity, to honor the fact that you have a body and you have a family and you have a life. And if you can only write your novel, if all of those things behave, line up perfectly, you will never write it. This is my permission to write when you can, how you can, as much as you can, and to feel no guilt about any of it. I'll see you in the next lesson.